hiyo style moja. You can bring all of them together. There is a time when you use authoritarians. There is a time when you can use, just like the way we have our hands. Mkono, uko na two sides. Usikue na moja tu. Wewe ni mkali pilipili. Ama wewe ni mpole pole tu, sauti hata isitui mtoto, hata macho yako hayaongei na mtoto. Siku ya 3 tukawa na facilitator mmoja ambaye aliongea juu ya widows and widowers. So it was widowhood and widowerhood. The beauty of this, the speaker ambaye alituongeleza ni yule ambaye alikuwa who lives with experience. Anaongea yale ambaye ameyapitia na akatupatia motisha sana ya kwamba when it comes, because it has to come to everyone at one stage, ni mtoto, ni kijana, ni msichana, ni mama, ni baba, widowhood will affect you at some stage. Kama ni mtoto, mama yako ni widow, ama baba yako ni widower. So it was a program which required everyone. Akasema ya kwamba challenges hii group inapitia ni stress, loneliness, decision becomes difficult, pressure and expectations, they get high. You have to do what the other spouse ambaye hayuko alikuwa anafanya. Nakumbuka akituambia siku moja ya kwamba yeye kabla ya bwana yake afe hakujua the difference between an electrician and a plumber. Siku moja akaita plumber mfanyie kazi kwa nyumba, na alipomaliza ile kazi ya plumbing akamwambia na kuna taa inatusumbua. Na yeye akasema mimi ni wa plumber, mimi ni wa maji, sihusiki na hiyo, kwa sababu hiyo kazi yote ilikuwa inafanywa na bwana yake. But ameanza kujifunza kujua what to do to be a father and a mother at the same time. Shida ingine alisema raising children is not easy. You must get a godfather, someone who speaks best to them. It can be a brother. It can be a brother in Christ. And that she taught us that. Vingine ni vitu kama property administration. Hii mnajua ya kwamba itaongelewa. We have a lawyer here who will speak about matrimonial property rights. Kama imetendeka utafanya namna gani? Kuna watu wanasongeza mpaka, kuna wengine wataka kuchukua shamba yote, unadeal na issues kama hizo aje. Na tukakuta ya kwamba they affect Christians and non-Christians alike. Friday ya siku hiyo tukawa na mental health, na tukakuwa na mzungumzaji alikuwa anasema ya kwamba kuna kitu inaitwa anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression, they are the major causes of mental health. If you don't deal with anxiety and depression, because anxiety will bring in stress. If they are not treated, it will go to depression. Depression is hard to treat. Ikiingia, imeingia. You will take many years of treating depression. Na akatuambia ya kwamba we must try to deal with issues as they come, so that they don't pile up. Ndio sifike situpereke kwa levels of depression. And it says, she said this, when a parent has depression, a child faces depression 3 times. When a parent has depression, the child faces depression 3 times. And the risk of that child getting depressed is so high. And then it says that if the parent developed the mental illness before age 20, the child's risk rises 4 to 5-fold. Na hiyo mtaisikia tena kwa mambo ya madrugs. Tuko na mtu wa kusema hapa. If a child gets into drug addiction before 25 years, the it will become so difficult for such a child to recover. So we have a responsibility to deal with these issues. Na tushikilie ndio wafika at least 22, 25, 26, you are safe that person may not be addicted or may not face depression to high levels. The same time, on mental health, on day 5, which was on Sunday last week, tukapatika kuwa na mmoja wa wageni ambaye anafanya kwa rehabilitation center on issues of drug addiction. Na akatuambia ya kwamba addiction is defined as a chronic relapsing disorder. Yani chronic, inakuja ikienda. Mtu akiwacha kidogo kutumia madawa, inarudi, then anarudi huko, anarudi nyuma. Now the consequences are very, they are grave. So it is important watoto wetu wajue ya kwamba addiction is a disease, and the disease is difficult to treat. The best thing, do not fall into addiction. Na tukaambiwa ya kwamba this addiction is not about drugs alone. It is also in other things that we use, like our screen time, too much screen time. You are on your phone, you are on your computer, you are on your TV, throughout maybe more than 12 hours a day. The next day, tukawa na separation and divorce. And we were taught that separation is a formal, a legal process. And if it is not dealt with, it graduates into divorce. The Bible tells us that divorce is not allowed, and only on one condition. The next day, tuliambiwa tulikuwa na daktari gynecologist ambaye anadeal na mambo ya fertility, and that touches both men and women. Na akatuambia hivi that he deals with cases of families that are not blessed with a child, and he said that there are several methods of rescue. It is not that once you have no child, forever you will not have a child. He said their discoveries have been made, and he gave us methods of recovery. He might be speaking to us online before we end. If it doesn't work, he said he will willingly come here on one Sabbath afternoon and talk to everyone to explain the methods that are available to save childlessness in a family. And also talked about one single-sex children in a family. Kuna familia zinaweza kuwa ziko na watoto vijana peke yao, familia hiyo itakuwa comfortable. Kuna wale wako na wasichana, hapa sasa ni mambo mbaya, hata hawa si watoto. Si mnajua hiyo maneno? Hata hawa si watoto. Sasa hiyo zote aliongea na akasema hivi, also there are families where children are disabled. And he said there are several options for interventions. It's not a death sentence that your children have a hearing impairment, have a seeing eyesight impairment, or whatever impairments there are. We were told there are about 13 types of disabilities. And of all those, there are several ways of escape, several ways of intervention. The next one was property ownership, inheritance, writing a will, who writes the will, where is it kept, when will it be used, all these things. And matrimonial property rights and succession. How do you succeed your husband's property or your wife's property if she had? There are families where the wife has more property than the man. And of course the Bible is against such. Hii yote tulifunzwa on how this can happen, how we can write a will, how can we safeguard our properties. au we can have 50-50. Mzee ako na 50 na bwana na mama ako na 50. The next day we talked about loss, grief, and bereavement. Again, this also, like other topics, this one also is a topic for everyone. Iwe ni mtoto, iwe ni kijana, iwe ni mtu mzee. Kila mtu anapoteza kitu ya thamana. It could be a human being, it could be something ambayo you cherish, unapenda. And you can grieve, and it's even worse when it's a human being. When we lose our loved ones, we grieve and we remain bereaved. We were told on how to intervene. When death comes, how do you grieve? How do you close to say, sasa, hii maziwa imemwagika? How do we proceed? How do we go forward? So, and of course, grieving is an outward sign. Kuna wengine watu dunia hii, kuna wale wanalia zaidi wakipoteza mpendo wao. Kuna wale wanalia kidogo, lakini kuna wale wanalia ndani. Hii yote iliongelelewa. Finally, the last day, we had what we called intimate partner relationship. Intimate partner relationship. This relationship, we were told, is an interpersonal relationship between two people or more, ambao wako na uhusiano ambao ni wa karibu. Now this one is emotionally allowed and physical. It starts from the heart. They say this relationship is created in the mind. Before you express it, before you tell someone, I love you and I really mean it, it must have come from the head. When you are not attached and connected, it gets to be so hard to have close, intimate relationship. And this involves feelings of romance and love and all this. If you are grounded in the word of the Lord, getting intimate with your partner gets easy. When it's not there, violence comes in. Na ndio unakuta ya kwamba mzee ameua bibi yake, akaua mpaka na watoto, akajimalizia, amemaliza hiyo familia, because they were not connected. I want to stop here, and I am hoping if you have a question, umeiandika, and the questions, we can avail something. The questions can be dropped here. Don't write your name. Just write your question. Usiandike jina tafadhali. Then we shall respond. We get a basin and have it here so that the questions can be placed inside. And I want to bring the guests one by one. Wataongea to 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes each, after which they would start responding to our questions. And I want to bring, I'm looking at the hardest, but the one who arrived first. So, Enoch, karibu. So Enoch will be speaking on drug addiction. He will be speaking on addiction and run over addiction in 5 to 7 minutes, and we then allow another person to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Professor, for this opportunity. And today afternoon, I'm happy to be part of this congregation. And I'm going to talk about addiction, specifically on drugs. That's addiction. A close or the types of addiction as Professor amewambia. Okay. So addiction is a chronic relapsing disease, as Professor said. It's a disease that inakuambia una ugonjwa. It's a disease that tells you are not having a disease. Before a person is affected or may undergo the stages. There are stages that a person have to undergo before akuwe addicted, and these stages are 4. The first one is experimental. Huko nyumbani huwa tunapata watoto wanaona baba akitumia pombe, and they start experimenting by taking that bottle of alcohol nyumbani, and then they want to feel to test and feel that response it gives to their body. And these drugs, once they get to your body, they alter the normal functioning of the body, especially the brain ndio inakuwa affected. We have stage number 2 ambayo inachangia mtu kutumia drugs.
So for those who have questions, nimeweka a point hapa, ukiandika unaweka hapo, na kama una karatasi, kuna karatasi zinapitishwa, so ukiandika una drop hapa kwa hii container iko hapa. Asante.
Thank you. Before moving on, I'm sorry I never told you what addiction is. Addiction is when an individual is hooked by drugs, and these drugs are many number. There are different classifications. Tuko na hallucinogens, we have opioids, we have inhalants, and once they are absorbed to our body, we normally experience a chemical reaction in our brain which keeps on seeking that substance. It can be alcohol, it can be bang, it can be cigarette. Especially cigarettes have a high response to our body. We are easily hooked. People are easily hooked by the nicotine substance that is in cigarettes. And these drugs nowadays are easily accessible in our community. In this town, Kisii town, ukitoka hivi utakutana na a number of wine and spirit kiosks, all shops that people trade or sell these drugs to people who pass along, or those who are addicted, wala ambao wamechukuliwa na uraibu wa madawa ya kulevya. So ndo maana nilisema step number 1 ilikuwa ni experimental stage. Ndio ya kwanza kabla mtu kufikia stage ya 4, ambayo inahusisha kujaribu kuchukua ile pombe kama ni baba anatumia au mama, na kujaribu kuionja, pate kuhisi how the body will react. Maana ajui, yeye ameona baba pale nyumbani akijaribu kutumia this alcohol. Second stage ni circumstantial or occasional. Na stage hii mara mingi inahusisha wakati kuna sherehe. Siku hizi tuko na birthday parties ama wakati wa mazishi, watu wengi hukutana, na wanapokutana huwa mara mingi traditionally kuna pombe ambayo inaletwa kule. na mtu akijua kwamba kuna mazishi mahali ama kuna birthday party somewhere, lazima ataenda kujiburudisha na pombe ama any drug that will be available at that place. Na stage ya tatu ni intensified ama regular. Stage hii inachukulia mtu it's ile ambayo imefikia mtu anatumia madawa ya kulevya kwa siku 3 au 4 kwa wiki, na imeanza kumletea madhara, the effects or the signs and symptoms. Mara mingi anaanza kuacha kuenda kazi, ama anakuwa na hangovers asubuhi. And then na stage ya mwisho, because of the interest of time, ni compulsive au addiction, ambayo ishamnasa yule mtu ambaye anatumia madawa ya kulevya, na haezi ishi bila kutumia haya madawa, anakuwa dependent on this drug. That's the last stage, na mara mingi ina affect the brain in parts that are responsible for movement. Ndio maana mtu akishalewa mara mingi unapata ana crawl, ni kama mtoto uko barabarani au kwa mtoro popote pale, utampata unable to move. Mara mingi labda anaweza kosa kuona vision, the vision, the part that is responsible for vision inakuwa affected, also the coordination part, the judgment part, na the reward part, memory and pain part huwa inakuwa affected. Na katika kutibu this addiction ya drugs, lazima mtu peleke kwa rehabilitation center, mahali tests zinafanywa kudhamini kiwango cha pombe au the level of drug that this person has consumed, or kiwango cha the level of drug in the body system. Na pale katika rehabilitation center kuna aina ya matibabu mengi. Kuna ya kutumia madawa ambayo yanakuwa prescribed na a psychiatrist. There is psychotherapy. There are other steps or a program that is set, naitwa 12 steps of AA, ambayo mtu anapelekwa nayo for a period of 3 months to 6 months. Na saa zingine inaweza extend even to 1 year. Na familia lazima iwajibike katika matibabu ya huyu mgonjwa. Pasipo na kuwajibika, huenda tena kisha toka pale rehabilitation center arudi katika ule uraibu wake wa pombe au the drugs, alcohol substance use. Ningependa kutamatisha hapo. Ni wape wenzangu pia nafasi wapate kunena nanyi. Asanteni.
Asante sana ndugu. So I hope you're writing your questions. We want to introduce the next speaker who will be talking about matrimonial rights and family inheritance and the likes. So she's Advocate Joyce Nyandoro. She was here with us last week, over the week, but again she's here today. So it is our time, but ndugu ataongea kwanza.
Happy Sabbath Church. Mimi naitwa Henry Omweri. Jukumu langu ni rahisi sana kuintroduce Joyce Nyandoro Miss. Nimesema Miss, sio Mrs. She's a refined lawyer in this town with a law firm in town. So those of you who have issues with she's also a registered mediator. Those who have issues for mediation, issues with the court matters, and you really want to be supported, she's here with us. As she comes over, She's introducing us to what many of us don't do because we believe we belong to church and therefore the law does not count. The law of this land comes from the Bible. It has been carved from the Bible. And the Bible clearly says, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And the right to go to court for matters of interpretation of the law is God-guided. And all of us are entitled to this kind of law and process. Mimi nikiwa chairman, niko ni chairman wa Amnesty International, a human rights commission. What is very important here is that we must start training our children to obey the law, right from home. Then, other than that obedience, we need to teach our children to communicate. In fact, we need to change our methods of approach where we leave our spouses go to work, then we write them an SMS or call them to tell them what they need to bring with you. We need to have a one-on-one conversation so that we can be able to avoid these things. Otherwise, all of us are entitled to privacy. We are entitled to security and protection and love. All of us are entitled to seek legal advice and counsel. And if all of us do not follow the law of God, we are all victims and candidates for court processes. And therefore, at this point, I invite one that will be meeting in court and therefore a friend of the court. I welcome Joyce Nyandoro, Miss. I didn't say Mrs., but Miss.
Thank you, Mr. Henry, for that introduction. Praise God. Happy Sabbath. Yes, as you've been told, my name is Joyce Nyandoro. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, practicing within Kisii town and its environs. And I'm humbled to be here today for us to share on matters pertaining your matrimonial property, succession, and writing of wills. So I will take you through the right to inherit the property of the deceased person, and that is what we call succession. And with this, it is important for us to know the previous laws that were in existence and what is now operational. Because maybe some of us might be affected because we are using the laws that have already been overtaken by time and have been amended. So initially, when on matters pertaining to succession, there was a difference when it comes to knowing who a person that is supposed to inherit the property is, and especially in regards to a spouse and who a spouse is. So previously, you will find that when it came to succession, a wife or a former wife, and when I say a former wife, it means a divorcee. You could, as long as that you were married to that person before and he has died, you were, yes, you had a right to inherit that property. But the law has since changed to the effect that once you have divorced from your husband and subsequently he dies, you'll no longer be entitled to own that property because you are not a wife. So previously, a former wife or a divorcee was entitled to own a property of the husband once he died, but right now, currently, the law prohibits that, and it's only the legal wife that can own that property. And then we also had the issue about who a dependent is and who could inherit the property as a dependent. And right now, a dependent is, the wife falls under a dependent, the children, and the deceased parents, step-parents, grandparents. Yes, as long as for the parents, step-parents, grandchildren and stepchildren, for you, the only thing you need to prove to court is that you are maintained by the deceased immediately before his death. But for the children and the wife, for you, you don't need to prove to court that you are maintained by the deceased. It's only for you to show court that you are legally married and these are the children that came as a result of that marriage. Also, when it comes to succession, the law will also consider whether you had a valid will before you died or not. So when you had a will before you died, that is a tested succession. And when you died without a will, that we will go to intestate succession. So when you died with a valid will, or before we know what is a will, so a will is just a document which stipulates the wishes of the testator on how he will wish his property to be distributed to his dependents once he has died. And so this will, a husband can write a will, anybody can write a will, as long as you are of capacity to write a will, and this can, as long as you are above the age of 18, you are mentally capable. And when you are writing this will, you should be free from coercion. And yes, you should be free from coercion or pressure at the time of writing wills. Why are we saying this? You'll find that sometimes a husband or a wife can pressure the spouse to go write a will for their benefit, and you are not writing that will out of your own will, but due to coercion. So in the event that will goes to court, and it can be proved that the deceased did not write this will out of his own will without undue influence, then that will be, if it is found that it was under coercion, it will be invalidated, and then the court will now go to distribute your property under intestate, as if you did not leave a will behind. So make sure, because right now we are trying to prevent a situation whereby a husband dies, the wife does not know the property, the children do not know the property. So it is good that when you have a property, discuss it with your wife, and maybe you can walk to an advocate's office, write a will. You as a wife, yes, you are. The law does not prohibit the person writing a will on who should be there when they are writing a will. So your spouse can be there. In as much as she's a dependent, she can be there. But as long as it can be proved that in as much as she was there, it was not through coercion. And when she's also among those people who are executing the will, it's also good that there be 2 or more witnesses. So if it's only your wife who is present when you're making that will, again, that will form a basis for it to be challenged before court. And also when you are writing a will, because we are Christian, we are encouraging people to let your wife know. But sometimes we can be living with a spouse that does not mean good to you. And so it is good that you don't let them know that you are writing a will. So you can have someone else come to execute that will, and that person can be your neighbor, it can be your friend, it can be your relative. So if that is when your life is at stake, by maybe if you're going to make a will and your spouse might turn against you and kill you so that they inherit that property. But because we are under the confines of Christianity, we believe that as a husband and wife, we have goodwill for each other, and no one is going to kill the other because of the property. And then also in succession, it is good to know that since at the moment former wives or wives that are not duly recognized by law are not subject to inherit that property, it is good you know that at the moment for you to be recognized as a wife, you have to have a valid certificate, marriage certificate. In as much as we know there are different types of marriages, you can contract your marriage under civil law, through the church wedding, and also the customary law wedding. So when you are married under customary law, you are not issued with a certificate. It's only when you are married under the civil or the church wedding, that's when you are issued with a certificate. But when you are married under customary law, make sure that you have registered your marriage. Otherwise, the same, you'll not be considered as a wife, but a cohabitee. So who is a cohabitee? So cohabitation refers to an arrangement in which an unmarried couple lives together in a long-term relationship that resembles a marriage. So that is how the court will interpret that marriage. And it will be mandatory for one to provide a valid marriage certificate with the deceased before seeking to claim his or her property. So again, we have come to realize that at the end of the day, it's a marriage certificate that will speak for you as being a wife. So in the event you are married to this man or wife for 30 years, for 40 years without a valid marriage certificate, then consider yourself as a cohabitee, and you'll not be recognized before court as a wife for purposes of inheritance. So what the court will do, the court will only recognize your children as a dependent to this, the deceased estate. But you will not be recognized as a wife, and therefore no provision will be given for you, and be given for you under the deceased estate. So I think now with the issue of the will and succession, we can now go to matrimonial property, which now affects spouses that are alive and they have decided to end their marriage by going to court to legally divorce. So once you have divorced, the next step is about you now distributing the matrimonial property between the two spouses, the husband and wife. So even here, the marriage, the issue of marriage comes into play when you are legally married to this person and you have a marriage certificate. That's when you can go to court and request for those properties to be distributed between the two of you. But in the event that you were not legally married, you do not have a valid marriage certificate, you cannot go to court for purposes of distribution of property or even divorce, because there is nothing legal there for you to divorce. So I hope you can hear me. Now when we come to the issue of matrimonial property, the applicable law in respect of matrimonial property is normally Article 45(3) of the Constitution that will be read together with the Matrimonial Property Act 2013. So it is also good to know what a matrimonial property is. And a matrimonial property means matrimonial homes, household goods, and effects in the matrimonial home or homes, or any other immovable and movable property jointly owned and acquired during the subsistence of marriage. That is, the definition is according to Section 6(1) of the Act. And what you need to know here is that trust property, or what we normally call ancestral property, And this is property that is held in trust under customary law. That property does not form part of matrimonial property. So when you are going to court to seek for dissolution of marriage and for distribution of your property, then just know that the ancestral home does not form part of the matrimonial property. So matrimonial home means any property that is owned or leased by both spouses and occupied or utilized by the spouses as their family home. And it includes any other attached property. And also for purposes of matrimonial property, a spouse means a husband or a wife. And marriage means the voluntary union of a man and a woman, whether it's monogamous or polygamous union and registered in accordance with the Marriage Act. And with this, we know that when you are getting married, the civil way, it provides for two types of marriage. So when you are registering your marriage under the AG's office, it is good that you know under what, which part of, under which part of the marriage are you contracting your marriage, because it's either monogamous or polygamous. And if you are not careful, then that will also bring problems to you because you do not know under which provision you contracted your marriage. So for monogamous, it means that you will only marry that one wife and no any other wife. So in the event you bring another wife after you contracted a monogamous marriage, you'll be committing an offense. And you can, your wife or your husband is at liberty to go to court and prosecute you for bigamy. But now when you register your marriage at the AG's office, that is civil marriage, under polygamous union, this is whereby in as much as you have chosen to marry, to register your marriage, you will still be free to marry a second wife. So make sure as Christians, because we are not mandated or we are not allowed to marry two wives, you make sure when you are registering your marriage, it's under monogamous marriage and not polygamous. And for contributions, now when also the court is distributing this property between, the spouses, it's also going to look at contributions. The contributions means monetary and non-monetary contribution, and it includes domestic work and management of the matrimonial home, child care, companionship, management of the family, business, property, and farm work. Family business means any business which is run for the benefit of the family by both spouses or either of the spouse, and generates income or other resources, or part of which are for the benefit of the family. So when you need for the matrimonial property rights, so you'll find that unless otherwise agreed, ownership of matrimonial property will vest in the spouses according to the contribution of either spouse towards its acquisition. This means once you are married, there are properties you can buy with your husband, and in as much as these properties are bought by you and your husband, but you do not have any evidence to show that you took part in acquisition of those property, and maybe this property is registered in either the name of your husband or the wife. So if you do not have any evidence to show that this property was acquired by both of you, then the court will just consider that this property belongs to the person who is registered. So it is good when you are owning properties or you are buying properties with your husband and wife, make sure that at least these properties are jointly owned, so that in the event of anything, when a property is jointly owned, It means when you are divorcing, that property will be distributed into two. That is when you jointly own the property. But now when you own this property solely and your partner is not registered in that in the ownership of that property, now you have a mandate to prove to court that you contributed towards acquiring that property, and you will be given a part of that property in accordance to how you contributed towards acquiring that property. And then there are these properties that they are praise God. Then when we are also talking about matrimonial property, an issue arises whereby a spouse walked into the marriage with a property. Like your husband acquired a property before they married you. So that property belongs to your husband and not you, unless now the parties agree that the property belongs to us. But you'll find that sometimes one of you can acquire that property before marriage, but now the other spouse can do substantial development on that property. So make sure when you are doing that substantial development of that property, you equally have the evidence. Maybe if you are buying cement, you are buying anything, you keep the receipts to show how you contributed substantially to that, towards developing that property. And I think with that, we can come to the end of the presentation and we can take questions. We can take questions after. Thank you.
So, mumesikia mengi hayo ambayo yamesemwa, but just a summary of it. There was a lingana kuwa nuli nena liko kunga cohabitation and cohabiti. Nge karama manyete no mosacha kwa sono kungu miaka no yantati yenye mabu atiri karatasi, then you are a cohabiti. So in case your partner dies, moya kolimu amenyere miaka 40 anye mabu atiri marriage certificate asa ko kulero to ko egukende kalimu arwasinere. Nga abana barabu na barabasakola ruwa mabera barukweti independence, but the ayogo ogosoka bose. So if you don't have that certificate, you have to karatasi ridia temango kolirigia botaraira. Thank you. I want to welcome the next person, Madam Joyce Alice, on mambo ya depression na related issues. Asante.
Happy Sabbath. Happy Sabbath. Wow, tunasikizana. Fanya hivi kutoka juu. Happy Sabbath. Happy day. Okay, welcome to this afternoon. Karibuni sana. Naona nitachanganya Kiswahili kidogo na Kizungu kidogo kwa sababu ya maybe somebody who might not get. Okay. Kwa jina mimi naitwa Alice Nyarangi Kibagendi. I'm a counselor psychologist. So, I'm going to take you through depression. Tunataka kuongelelea depression. Depression ni kusema nini? Depression ni nini? Na inatuadhiri aje kama sisi binadamu? Depression is a common and serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel. It affects you how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. The behavior that comes out of you. How do you behave? When you behave in a way that is not right, you are suspected to be having a problem. So we are going to look at this depression and see the other things you have when you are depressed. You have a feeling of sadness. Unajisikia usikii vizuri, unasikia vibaya. You are irritated all the time and you lose interest. Hauna hamu ya kazi yoyote yenye unapendaga kufanya kila wakati. Kile kitu unapendaga kufanya kila wakati, unapendaga kuamka asubuhi, unafagia nyumba yako, unajiweka tayari, unakimbia kule soko, lakini inafika wakati unasikia kuamka, unasema hata sisikii kuamka. Kufagia nyumba unasema hata wacha leo tu ikae. Unaanza kusikia vitu kama hiyo, uwezi kuenjoy ile kazi unapendaga kufanya. Kama ni mwalimu anafika shule, hajatengeneza plani yake, lakini anasikia like ni mdhoofu. Umefika kazini, unataka kufanya kazi yako, lakini unasikia kuchoka. Unasikia kuwa irritated. You are very irritated. Unasikia uko na, what do we call it? Yani uko na, umeboeka sana, usikii kuguza kitu, lakini umetoka kwako na umefika kazi. Hizi vitu zote zikiendelea, unasikia unakuwa ufikiri vizuri, ama saa zingine unasahau sana. Unakuta ulifanya kitu jana, lakini ukiulizwa leo mlikula nini jana jioni, huwezi kumbuka. Unajaribu kukumbuka na tulikula nini kweli, unakuta umesahau. Kesho unaulizwa na mlienda kanisa, mlifundishwa nini? Sama nilikuwa tamu sana na ulielewa sana, lakini unaulizwa, you are like, tulifundishwa na huyo pastor, alitufundisha vizuri sana. Wewe unasema tu vizuri sana, lakini uelezei because you can't remember. Unaenda ukiwa hivyo. And if this vitu nimesema zote zikiendelea hivyo for like 2 weeks persistent, unakuta mtu anasahau, anakuwa sad, anakuwa anxious, na kila wakati anaendelea kuwa na hizo tabia. Na symptom nyingine ni kulala. Unajikuta unasikia tu kulala. Ulikuja kanisa asubuhi, lakini masaa mingi ni yale umelala. Vitu mingi zimekupita. Kila kitu imekupita. Ama zingine unajikuta hausikii hamu ya kulala. Unaingia kwa kitanda saa 2, by saa 4 hauna usingizi. Usingizi ingine itakuja asubuhi saa 9. Ukienda kuamka, obuakia. Ujalala, unasikia ujalala. Kila wakati hauna usingizi, ama uko na usingizi mingi ni kulala tu. Symptom ingine ni kutokukula. Hausikii hamu ya kukula, unaamka asubuhi, unashinda mchana yote, hausikii hamu. Wewe ukipewa chakula imejaa kwa sahani, chakula tamu tu, unaguzaguza, unasema weka na hapo nitakula hiyo saa ingine. Na ulikuwa na njaa na hujakula tangu asubuhi. Jioni ikifika tena unapewa, hakuna hamu, unaguzaguza, unasema weka nitakula saa zingine, saa hii sisikii. Unakuta ikipersist hivyo inaendelea. Kitu kingine ni hiyo, ukiendelea hivyo na hizo tabia, huyu mtu mwenye anaenda through depression na ana behave hivyo, ikiendelea for 2 weeks, umwangalie vizuri. If it persists, kama ni wewe mwenyewe, ujiangalie vizuri, ujisikize. If it persists for 2 weeks, you are going through depression. Na hiyo depression, it is disturbing always. It is a disturbing condition. Inakuweka kwa hiyo disturbing condition, unakuwa depressed kila wakati, unakuwa na anxiety, hata ukiongeleshwa na mtu unamrudisha, kuna gonkwana ndindo kibio kuna gontebi. Yani you are ready to answer. You are ready to answer. You are toxic to anybody you meet. Hata kama ni watoto wako wakikuongeresha, baba akiongea na mnanisumbua, mnaniitisha pesa hapa, sina pesa. You can't answer well. And when you don't answer well, unawairritate wale wengine. Una become toxic to your people. Try to communicate well. Try to be a good communicator. Na ukiona unaendelea hivyo, you are going through depression. Unaingia kwa gari, conductor anakuitisha pesa, unamwambia ngoja nitakupea tukitoka nimekalia pesa. Like men, they sit on their money. Anamwambia unasumbua wewe, unasumbua, ulikuja gari, leta pesa haraka. You find somebody very anxious, somebody going through stress. Unakuta hizo vitu zinakusumbua na zinaendelea. Na tukiangalia causes za hizo zinaletwa na biological, which is the chemistry in the brain, zenye zinamsumbua mtu. The brain imekuwa imesumbuka na imekuwa mgonjwa, because when you are depressed, you are a sick person. And then there is also genetic. You find that also genetics depend. Unakuta watu tunasema kule kwa fulani, kule ngambo, wale wanakaaga wazimu. Kila mtu huko ni wazimu. Msichana ni wazimu, kijana ni wazimu, wengine baba amekunywa pombe ni wazimu. They are not wazimu. They are sick. When they are sick in the brain, ni genetic. And then when they take drugs, zina trigger because of the genetic. How do they manage their stress? Are they able? Kama hawako able, unakuta hiyo depression inawaingia haraka. Na kwa sababu tunakuta familia zingine watu wanakunywa madawa na wanakunywa pombe, but they are just okay. Si ndio? Wengine anachunga familia yake vizuri na anakunywa pombe kabisa, lakini kwa sababu ya genetic yake iko powerful, hawezi kuwa anatingizwa nayo, he is able to stabilize. Unakuta hizo vitu zote. There is also the psychological, obsessive personalities, the borderline, and the dependency of how they are using the chemicals and the drugs and whatever. Now those that don't use drugs, you find that in a family, vile tumeambiwa na professor hapa, yale yenye tumesoma throughout the 2 weeks, tumesoma vile we handle our families. If we handle our families wrongly, the parenting types of a family, ikiwa tunatumia vibaya, tuna irritate wengine, we become toxic in the houses, we irritate people and we make them feel not wanted, they feel depressed, they feel sad, kwa sababu anaona ni kama baba anamchukia. Watu wengine uuliza, na huyu mama kweli ni mama yangu? Ananiongereshaga aje? Ama ananichapaga sana? Mpaka mtoto anakuwa traumatized, anaishi hiyo maisha. Anajikuta ako stressed all through, mpaka anakuwa depressed. Mtoto anakuwa depressed mpaka akienda shule, unakuta anapotea kwa vichaka, aendi shule kwa sababu shule anachapwa, nyumbani anachapwa. Vitu zenye zinaendelea zinamtraumatize. Alafu anaingiwa na depression. Huyu mtoto utamkuta ametoroka, ameenda amekuwa chokora. Ndio machokora tunawakuta, ukiwauliza kwa nini unakaaga hapa street, anakuambia afadhali hapa street nikose cha kukula, lakini nisikae na wale wazazi, because the parents are very toxic. Those things bring depression. Zinakuta watu na zinawapeleka. So ni nini kinafanya watu wana behave hivyo? Ni drugs. Tumeongeleshwa juu ya drugs. Watu unakuwa addicted. Una take drugs, mwingine anakuwa addicted. Addiction can be ni ile wewe unanunuaga nguo kama sisi wa mama. Ukipita leo unanunua nguo, unaenda nazo. Ukifika nyumbani unapata ni mambitambara, hata unashindwa ulinunua ya nini. Tena kesho unanunua zingine 2, 3. Unakuwa na hiyo addiction. Hizo addiction zinaleta bado depression. Inakufanya unakuwa addicted, ukiwa addicted unakuwa depressed kwa sababu you are overusing your money until you don't know even where you used your money. Na depression will affect watu gani? Depression ina affect watu wakubwa na watu wadogo. Kama wazee unakuta wako na ugonjwa wa Alzheimer na Parkinson's, na hiyo inawasumbua sana, mpaka unakuta vijana wetu wanaanza kuua wazee ati kwa sababu wako na nywele nyeupe. Mama anakuwa na Parkinson's na Alzheimer, mpaka unakuta mama ataamka usiku anasahau vitu, anasahau ovyo, mpaka unamkuta ameamka asubuhi, usiku saa 8 ameweka bagi amevaa nguo vizuri na amechukua bagi, anataka kwenda hospitali, anawaambia anataka kwenda hospitali. Utamkuta ametoka na ameteremka. Watu wakimpata wanamuita nini? Mchawi, si ndio? Wanamuita mchawi. Kuna hayo magonjwa yana affect wazee. Lazima tuelewe vijana, tusiendelee kuua wazee wetu ati nywele nyeupe yeye ni mchawi. Wamama na wababa wazee huwa wanasahau sana na wako na hiyo ugonjwa. So sisemi uchawi haiko, uchawi iko. Na iko vile inafanya kazi yake kwa wenye wanaifanya na wenye wanaijua. So hiyo ikiendelea hivyo, tusiendelee kuua watu wetu na tuweze kuwasaidia na kuelewa. Saa hizi vile tumeelewa symptoms za hiyo depression, tuweze kujua na tuweze kuwasaidia. Na hawa watu wanaweza kutibiwa aje? People are supposed to seek professional help ukiwa mgonjwa na depression. Kuna psychotherapy yenye utafanyiwa. Hiyo tunaiita ni talk therapy. Unakuja, unaongeleshwa na professional na hata unapewa dawa through a psychiatrist, doctor and a clinical psychiatrist. Wanakupea dawa, alafu you work hand in hand na madaktari hao wawili, psychiatrist and psychotherapists, au ni psychologist. When you are talked to and you get medication, hawa watu uweza kupona. Ukiendelea kukuwa na hii ugonjwa utapona. You prevent it by maintaining good health sleeping routine, manage stress, be able to have coping mechanisms, practice self-care and exercise mediation. Lazima ujisikize mwili wako. Hizo symptoms tumepewa, ujue ni gani, tusiwache watu wakikufa na hayo magonjwa. Na in case those problems are there, na unaona mtu ameathirika, you can look for a professional ama chief, you report to them, they know how to reach us. You can be able to reach us, kwa sababu ni mgonjwa na depression, hawezi kukubali ni mgonjwa, wewe ndio umeona. So ukimuongeresha na hataki, we have the community health frontiers. You report to them, they will know how to reach us and let us get those people and help them. Tusiwache watu wakijinyonga, because mwisho mtu wa depression akifikia anakuaga suicidal na anataka kujinyonga. Akifikia hapo atanyonga watoto wake, atanyonga bibi na yeye ajiue. So let us take caution, let us be very vigilant, tuweze kuangalia na tuone watu wakiwa wagonjwa, tuweze kuwasaidia. Asanteni, wacha ni wind up kwa sababu masaa imeisha. Mental health iwezi ongelelewa na dakika 7. We can take even a whole day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Alice. So, kulingana na zile symptoms na signs amepeana, ni kama wengi wetu tuko na depression na hatujui. Si ndio kweli? Amesema wate chinda wakunya kuomba na lioka,
mwana ko sabege ntokwara mwaka katege ugo sabu transport gari mego tena inkaranse te korunsa te gari ra yasko chimotwe liwe isire weka ko sabu chibesa gwata banga nayo kunya gonsumbua alioka simeona vitu kama hizo. Uliwe ikile kanisa in the morning, you start sleeping immediately, si ndio? Kwa hivyo wale watu wanalalanga kanisa tuwaweke kwa hiyo kategori ama chunga tusikubrand. So asante sana our counselor. So the next person we'll invite is Dr. Lista Kefa. She'll talk of family dynamics encompassing loss, grief, and bereavement. So karibu sana. So in the next around 10 minutes she'll do that. Then we get the next speaker. Thank you.
Asante sana mchungaji kwa nafasi. Wana wa mfalme, amjambo. Amjambo tena. Asante sana kwa nafasi kwa sababu ya muda wetu. Elda amesema nitaangalia masuala ya family dynamics and grief and bereavement. Tuliangalia hii siku ya kwanza ya hii mkutano, kwa wale walikuwa tulichukua muda mrefu, lakini leo kwa dakika 10 ni kitu kidogo tunaweza fanya, but wacha nijaribu. Kwa familia zetu, hapa leo hii tuko na familia, kila mtu ako na familia yake. Lakini tukianza kupewa story ya kila mtu hapa na familia yake, utapata we are so different. The way we exist in our family, utasikia mwingine atasema mimi niko na bwana, niko na watoto kwa nyumba. Mwingine atakwambia mimi niko na watoto wangu tu kwa nyumba. And that's still a family. Another one can tell you sisi tumezeeka, watoto wameshaenda, tumebaki peke yetu. So hiyo old age family, hiyo is another family dynamic. Kuna mwingine atasema sisi hatuna wazazi, tuko tu watoto na ndio tuko kwa nyumba. That's another family. And all these families, they exist in our world. Problem ni moja tu, kwamba we are handling each one of us the same way, despite the type of family we are coming from. Ule mtoto anatoka kwa familia yenye iko complete, utamfananisha na ule mtoto ambaye ni yatima. Ule mtoto ambaye ako single mother family, hautamfananisha na ule ako na mtoto wazazi wamezeeka. Wale wazazi ambayo wanaishi kwa familia wakiwa wawili tu wamezeeka, hakuna mtoto kwa nyumba, hautawalinganisha na wale wazazi wanalea watoto sahi. Au wazazi wenye watoto wameenda shule, hautawalinganisha na wale hawajazaa watoto. Pia kuna familia hawana watoto. All those are the different families that we have. And we have changes that has taken place in those families. Because those families, they define who you are. Leo hii, we are so different, we behave so differently because of where we come from. Because of the families where we have been brought up. And this family, tusipojielewa vizuri, we see things differently. Tusipojielewa vizuri, we see ourselves differently. The world can be very bad for you. Kama unaona dunia iko mbaya, ni kwa sababu ya ile familia ambayo umetoka. And the world can be so good for you. Wengine wakisema ni lini Yesu atakuja tutoke kwa hiyo, unasema kwa nini akuje haraka? It is because of where you are coming from. That's why I thank the family ministry in this church kwa kuorganize a family meeting like this, a program like this. Because this is where we know ourselves. Tunajielewa. My colleague ameongea about depression. Depression ikiingia kwa familia, that family changes. This person may not talk to you. Umesikia mpaka wengine wanafika mpaka waongei na wageni. Wengine wanafika wakuli na watoto kwa meza. Wengine wafika waongeleshani kabisa. It is because of the family dynamics. Family yenye Mungu aliumba ni familia ambaye mama na baba na watoto wako pamoja. They love each other, they care for each other, they respect each other, they honor each other. They wish each other well. But if things change, everything again changes about that family. So what are we saying? As a family is changing, you need to be informed. If you are left behind, wazee, kuna swali nimeona hapa, miaka ikienda sana na mama na baba wako kwa boma, wamekaa peke yao, wameanza kuishi room tofauti kwa nyumba. Wameanza kujishughulikia kivyao, kila mtu jishughulikie vile huko. Hata mwingine alisema kwamba hata kitanda wameanza kulala kando kando. Ni kwa sababu gani? They have not been given information on how to cope in the new family. That's a change in the family. Kuna wakati mlikuwa mnaenda pamoja sokoni, mnaweza enda church pamoja, na kuna wakati mnafika wewe anasema mimi nimechelewa, wewe baki hapo, kitambo uogeshe watoto, kitambo watayarishe, mimi nimechelewa nimeenda. That's a family dynamic. Things have changed. And kama hatuwezi handle hizo changes, our families will be disasters. And we shall be in homes where we are living in a disastrous life. But our prayer is that we get information. Let's understand ourselves. Rudi kwa familia yako, wewe jiulize, kwa nini leo siku hizi mama anivuli nguo kila siku vile alikuwa anavua wakati ule hakuwa na mtoto? Labda unaanza kuona hapigi nguo yako pasi. Umeanza kuleta vitina kwa sababu huyu mama unasema siku hizi anipendi, amebadilika. One problem that you have is because you are not understanding the family dynamics. Something has happened. You are only the two of you, mtoto ameingilia kati, diversion imeingia ya hizo responsibilities, umeanza sasa kupatiana more time kwa mtoto. And if you are not able to balance or understand what is happening, mnaweza vunja familia. Familia itavunjika, na kweli hakuna mtu ako na makosa hapo. It's only lack of that information and understanding that there is a family dynamic that has taken place. So what I'm saying about family dynamics, whether you are coming from a very proper nuclear family, from a childless family, from an orphan family, wherever you are coming from, you can still have the best in the world. It is the way you will view it. Change your perspective, encourage yourself, be positive about that life. Someone has lost a wife, and life becomes very difficult for them to cope. Wakati imekuwa ngumu, you start getting sad, anger, blame, and you get depressed because you didn't accept. Na kwa sababu huku accept hiyo hali ya maisha ambayo imeingia, na ukaanza kutafuta njia ya kucope, and you still proceed with life, you may end up into what Madam has said, depression. And once you have depression, your focus is changed, your life perspective is changed, the way you view people is changed, your relatives become enemies, your friends become enemies, and you see the world as a very bad place for you. And that's why people kill themselves. Kuna mwingine ataenda apate kuna tofauti. Some of these things is to get information. Labda kazi mama anafanya kazi, baba pia anafanya kazi. Na kuna mabadiliko mingi. Huyu akikuja nyumbani amekuja na stress zake za kazi yake. Huyu amekuja nyumbani na stress zake za kazi yake. When you meet in the house, you still project them in the house. Hizo shida za pale na pale mnazileta hapo kwa nyumba. When they are reflected in the house or projected in the house, the kids will suffer. Watoto wataanza kuona mtazamo mwingine. They will see there is no much attention from you. Ile kitu walikuwa wanapenda kufanya, kama ni kusoma, they will withdraw. Kama ni kwenda kanisani, they will withdraw. Utapata watoto sasa wameanza kubehave in a way unaanza kuuliza, kwani watoto wametoa tabia mbaya wapi? Unaanza kublame watoto wengine wenye wanatembea na wao, but the problem probably came from inside the house. So what are we saying? Let's embrace change when it comes. Find a way to live with that change and still remain focused, still maintain your perspective, and still see the world as a good place to be. Grief and bereavement. Tuliangalia hiyo siku tukaona kwamba all of us undergo grief. Grief ni reactions, unexpected reactions to a loss of something. There is a way you behave or you react when you have lost something. Na tulisema loss sio watu tu wanakufa. it's not only people that we lose, we also lose ourselves. There is a way your self-esteem can be lost because of what someone said. There is a way your self-esteem can be lost because of the way you were handled in public. There is a way your self-esteem is lost because of what someone said about you. We lose our self-esteem, we lose our properties. Kuna watu wanachomewa nyumba na wanabaki hivyo maisha inabadilika. They lose everything. That is a loss. That you are grieving for the same. You can also lose a very close family member. You can lose a parent, you can lose a child, you can lose a father, you can lose a mother. The reactions that you give in that experience of loss is what we call grief. So when you have been bereaved, is the person who has undergone a loss. So when you umepoteza, tunasema you are bereaved. That family has been bereaved. The mother has been bereaved of the loss of the child or loss of the father. Every one of us, we incur loss. And even now, there's someone who has incurred loss. Kuna message umeona kwa simu yako. Na hiyo message imekudisturb. Umefeel, there is a friend of mine, ameniandikia message mbaya. Ni kama tutakosana. You are losing that friend. You have incurred loss. And you are at some point, you are appearing like you are sad, you are grieving about it. That is a loss. That is a grief. How do we handle this? Most of us, we have changed ourselves completely. We are not the people that we were at some given time when loss had not occurred because we didn't know how to handle this loss. Normally, someone who has undergone loss, there will be anger. There will be sadness. Utalia, utakuwa na hasira, utaongea mambo mingi. Hiyo ni hali ya reactions ya loss. You have lost something. So you don't behave normally because of that loss. And therefore we say you are a normal person who is undergoing a normal experience, but this experience is abnormal to you. So maybe hujapata kifo kwa familia yako, to you hiyo kifo uelewi. But someone mwenye ameielewa kabisa ni ule amepitia kwa hiyo kifo. And the way we may ourselves, kuna tabia ya huyo mtu mwenye amefiwa na tabia yako mwenye hujafiwa. So tukiwa kanisani, unaanza kuona mtu ameanza kukaa peke yake mahali. Unaanza kuona mtu hataki kuongelesha watu, akimaliza church anatoka akienda. Kuna mwingine wakiitwa tu leo ni family meeting anasema, "Hey, family naenda na nani sasa? Si nilipoteza bwanangu ama baba mzee wangu." So umeanza kuji-isolate and you are denying that loss. Accept that it has happened. That is a change. Accept it. Try to review what used to be there and what you are not expecting to be there after the loss. You are coming into terms with the new life. You are trying to find yourself somewhere, to find comfort somewhere after you have lost. So what are you supposed to do? Seek help. That is why tumeletwa hapa kama psychological counselors, where you are given a therapy on how to deal with it. Lakini tulisema hivi, tufanya kitu inaitwa psychological debriefing, what we call psychological first aid. Wakati kifo imefanyika or you have undergone a loss, don't sit and wait for the change to come by itself. Seek help. If it's a family that has lost someone, that is the time you bring a counselor into that family. That is the time the counselor helps you to cope with the new situation very fast. Otherwise, utapata mmelia hapo, siku zimeenda, mwezi imeisha, bado hamjasahau, you are still mourning, mwaka imeisha, miaka 5 imeisha, mtu akikufa pande hii, mnamlilia lakini haumlilii huyu amekufa, unalilia ule mwenye alikufanga. Because you didn't grieve completely. We call it unresolved grieving. Anyone suffering from unresolved grieving, you will always behave differently. You will see things differently. You will hate people. Watu wataanza, utasema fulani ni kama ndiye alifanya hii kitu. Yeye ndiye alifanya mtoto wangu akakufa. Yeye ndiye alifanya bwana wangu akakufa. You are trying to give reason. You are still under blame. Hukumaliza stages of grief until you came to acceptance. That is where we are here to tell you, look for a counselor in case mmepata na hiyo shida kwa familia, let a counselor kwa familia. At that point, wacha kama tumepata shida, mwili imewekwa level 6 hapa, ni sawa, tulie pale, let's mourn the way we want to mourn. Kuna wengine wata faint, kuna wengine watapiga nduru, kuna wengine wata sob. People cry differently. Allow them to cry. Don't encourage someone that don't cry. No. Allow, even men, please, men, cry. When you have lost, cry. Because when you don't, you pile them up, and those pressures are the one that can bring you to depression. Wacha watu wa mourn wamalize. As you go home, sanya watu pale nyumbani. After one day, now bring a counselor. Mtaanza kuongea juu ule mtu amefariki, uzuri wake yote, ni nini ilifanyika. Hapo ndio blame yote inaishia. So you will not be blaming God, you will not be blaming anyone. We gave an example. Lazarus, when he died, Mary and Martha were blaming Jesus. Why didn't you come early? Mpaka wakati Yesu amekuja resurrect Lazarus, they were not able to see that resurrection. They were only saying, you delayed, you came late. And therefore our brother died. And because of that, the blame was to continue if Jesus didn't resurrect Lazarus. Lakini kwa sababu alikuwa resurrected, they were now okay. They said, sasa ndugu yetu amerudi. So when you don't see the resurrection, you will remain at that blame. You will continue living with it with a lot of anger. Then you go to depression. And then there we will find you killing yourself. Tutakupata wazimu hapo kwa barabara. Tutakupata unajificha wageni wakikuja. Napata mwingine hata wanaingia kwa kitanda, chini ya kitanda, hawakuli na wageni. Those are not uchawi. Those are psychological problems that come out of unresolved grieving. What are we encouraging our people to do? Seek help when you have lost. Seek that help when you have lost. And because I was given only 10 minutes, let me address some questions here. Someone has got a spouse who lives outside Kenya. Akuna mtoto wa 10 years. Lakini ajui kama alete maid msichana ama houseboy. So anauliza, what type of gender of a house help do I need to employ at my house age difference? Looking at the age difference. Sasa wewe ukiwa unafanya ulezi wa mtoto, our world is so different nowadays. Hata wale wenye wako pamoja, wale wanawalelea watoto, bora upate maid. That's where we have reached. Bora tu nipate mtu wa kukaa kwa nyumba, mimi niende kazini. So huyu mwenye unapata, you didn't even take time to orientate this person as to what you expect from her in that home. Anaanza kuleta ile anajua. We are different. We are coming from different families. So what the person knows ndiye anakuja, anaanza kukaa na hao watoto akiwafundisha. After a short while umeanza kuona watoto wako wamebadilika. Did you do any of those training on what you expect from this maid? Gender of this maid. Of course we know what is happening nowadays. I cannot bring a houseboy for my children who are girls. I cannot bring those issues that rape can happen, defilement can happen to those children. That's tempting anyone. So wewe ikiwa ni vizuri sana, ikiwa ni vizuri, na hiyo ndio tumetoroka sana. Wazazi wetu watafanya kazi nzuri kwa kutuangalilia watoto kama ingekuwa inawezekana. Na kama ingekuwa inawezekana, get someone of the age that you can speak to and the person can understand what you need, and you also be close to that relationship that mtoto anapata na maid wake. Don't just live for the maid alafu nasema mimi bora nimeenda kazi, nimerudi, mtoto nimempata. So many people go through. We see what's going online. Tunaziona social media. Mtoto anachapwa, mtoto analishwa vibaya, anarushwa pale. You don't know what is happening. When you come in the evening, unapata mtoto ni mnyonge na uelewi, unasema amechoka, anataka kulala. Find out and be close to that maid or houseboy that you want, but consider gender. As you've just said, it is right, consider gender. But also, if you can get someone that you can share with in a way that you understand each other on what you expect from the person, that would be the best thing to do. Na wale wazee wetu wenye wamefika miaka, wameseparate rooms, hawalali pamoja, sahi room zao ni kando, kitanda ni kando, lakini wanahisi kwamba ifai kukua hivyo. That's a family dynamic. Not unless you come together and discuss about it. There is no way you are going to handle that. Discuss about it. Ask yourself, elewa huyu mwenzako, kwa nini anataka alale kwa room yake? Na mwingine, kwa nini unapenda kulala kwa room yako? Put your minds together and you will get a solution for the same. Communicate what you need. Communicate your desire even in that scenario, so that you try to come to an amicable understanding kwamba hata kama tumezeeka imaanishi upendo wetu imeisha. So communicate with one another, share about it, and you will come to understand why that one wants it the same way. And if you find it's a problem that causes the mother to sleep separately from the father, then you seek help. That's why we have the counselors here to help you. Then, is it good for Christians to search for partners online? What can I do if I want to be married again with a single partner like me as a Christian? The way partners are found, social media came. Social media has not been there before. That's another thing that has brought a family dynamic. Mambo na technology. Vile imekuja, we are now a village. The whole world, you can chat with someone in China, someone in UK. We are a village because of technology. You will get to know more people that you didn't. Initially, wewe unaenda tu unasema pale ninaenda kanisani ndio najua watu. Pale nilienda shuleni ndio najua watu. Pale ninaishi ndio najua watu. But now with technology, it exposes you to the outer world. And then we have so many people, different people out there. So when you get an online partner, umeanza kuongea na yeye, na umeanza kuinteract na yeye. There are some who have been married by this online partnering. But what I can caution you is, this person that you've got online, do not conclude for marriage even before you meet physically to know each other for some time. Others have been killed. Wengine wamejipata wameingia kwa shida. Wengine wameingia kwa watu wenye hata hawezi toka pale, wameleta homosexuals wako pale, the gays, the lesbians wako pale. Take your time. Even if you get this partner online, do not rush. Take your time. And if it's possible, take time that you engage physically to know each other well. Now you anasema, what can I do if I want to be married again with a single partner like me as a Christian? So this one is, I don't know whether amepoteza partner wake ama anamaanisha nini, but ni kama amepoteza the spouse na anataka kukuwa married again by a single partner. We talked about this. Let us be real about life. Let us be real. Our culture holds us. And it is high time we discuss even that culture before you say this is my culture that I can cling to. Kuna mambo mingi tulikuwa tunazungumza hapa, tukaulizana, sasa ule mama amefiwa. Na mama amefiwa tu, anatasema sasa nitaishi aje, ametaka kuolewa. Na wewe akitaka kuolewa, hatutaki aolewe. Unasema wewe ni mtu wa kanisa, huwezi olewa, wewe kuvumilia tu kaa hivyo. It leads even to more evil. What this mama will be doing in private that you do not see and you not be knowing, it will be more evil than good. Bring these people together. That's why I encourage the one in charge of the family life. Weka hawa watu pamoja, teach them, discuss with them, listen to them. Their situation is not your situation. Listen to them. And whatever that you'll come into conclusion with, it's something that will be logical and reasonable, that we will see hii kitu walielewana kufanya, iko sawa kwa huyu na iko sawa kwa huyu mwingine. Let's expose ourselves outside culture. Let's be realistic. Let's be understanding. Let's look at things from different perspectives depending on where you are standing. And then what can one do in order to heal faster after the death of a loved one? If you are not able to heal at that point, you need counseling. You need to seek a psychological counselor to help you do the same. Wacha Mungu awabariki. Kwa sababu ya wakati, I will stop at that. Thank you so much.
Asante sana, Dr. Lista. I believe we have got a lot of information in a short period. Asante sana. So we are going to our last presenter, Brother Moses Muracha. Being the last one, we'll give you 10 minutes to do your presentation and answer questions if any. Then congregation, we are sorry we have gone past our time by 13 minutes. So we would like to borrow 10 minutes for him, then another 6 minutes for the presenters who are remaining to answer questions, if any. So if you grant us that, we'll appreciate. Thank you.
Asante sana mchungaji. Happy Sabbath. Happy day. Asante kwa sababu ya fursa hii. Kwa majina ni Moses Moracha. Mimi ni mwanasaikolojia. I'm a psychologist. I also happen to be a certified professional mediator and a mental health advocate in Kisii, working under Gusii Mental Health Awareness. I believe I was given a topic of gender-based violence, which has become a great problem in the society, which is also causing a lot of problems in families. And today, even as we speak about family dynamics, it's important that we talk about this topic of gender-based violence. Of course, as I finish, I'll handle something small on intimate partner violence or IPV. So tunapozungumza kuhusu gender-based violence, ni mambo ambayo yamekuwa changamoto katika maisha yetu, na tunapozungumza kuhusu gender-based violence, wakati mwingi huwa what comes in mind is women and the girl child. But we've come to realize that kuna wanaume pia na vijana who undergo gender-based violence. And this is something that we want to discourage in our families as far as we are talking about family dynamics. How do we handle our issues when they come up in the family? Na ni jinsi gani sisi tunapokuwa pale katika familia tunaweza kusuluhisha zile changamoto ambazo tunapata. Na ifikapo wakati ambapo labda mmoja katika ile familia hawezi pata njia ambayo ni bora katika kusuluhisha ile changamoto, ndio tunapata ya kwamba kunakuwa na violence. Na wakati tunakuwa na ile violence, sometimes it goes to extreme, ambapo unapata labda there is a spouse or a partner who ends up dying or being hurt, ambapo labda mtu anaishia kuwa hata na ulemavu katika maisha yake. So when we talk about gender-based violence, it is something that we really discourage in our family setting. Na tunapowalea watoto jinsi ambavyo wanakuwa, sisi kama wazazi ambao tunawalea wale watoto, kuna mambo ambayo watoto wetu wanasoma kutoka kwetu kama wazazi. Na inapokuwa ya kwamba sisi kama wazazi tuko na issues ya gender ama gender-based violence katika familia zetu, yule mtoto atakuwa na akiwa mtu mzima akipata familia, definitely that is what is going to happen in that young family. So it is upon us as parents to have that responsibility ya kwamba tuweze kukuwa na maadili ambayo ni mema. Tunapowalea watoto tuwalee kwa njia nzuri. Na just to look at some of the things that zinaweza kuleta issue ya violence katika familia. Na moja yao ni economic status of the family. Na unapata ya kwamba katika familia, jinsi ambavyo mnajipanga kama mke na mwanamume, na jinsi ambavyo mnawalea ama mnainua ile familia ama mnailea ile familia, monetary is also a factor. Na iwapo wewe katika uwezo wako kuna kiwango ambacho umefika, and there are those demands that are in the family that requires you to handle, and if you are not able to handle that, at times it becomes something that is pressing upon the man or the one that is providing in the family. Na ikiwa sisi katika familia hatuna ile openness na kuzungumza na kuelezea jinsi ambavyo tuna changamoto ambazo tunapitia, itakuwa ni shida kwa yule ambaye ana provide for the family, ya kwamba mama anaitisha, watoto wanaitisha, na kile kipato cha yule ambaye ana provide kwa familia ambaye ni baba, unapata ya kwamba hatimilizi yale mahitaji ya familia. So kitu kizuri ni kwamba sisi katika familia zetu we have an open communication, we have an open dialogue, ambapo ikiwa wewe huwezi kufikia kiwango fulani, ni vyema ya kwamba familia yako iweze kujua. Na wakati mwingine pia katika mambo ya economics, katika familia zetu we come from different families. Na unapata ya kwamba inawezekana katika familia kuna yule ambaye anaitwa breadwinner. Na jinsi ambavyo dunia inakuwa, utapata ya kwamba ni mama ambaye ni breadwinner katika familia. Na labda yule mzee kipato chake kiko chini. So tusipokuwa na ile communication, open communication between the spouse, huwa inafikia mahali ambapo tunaanza kusema there is miscommunication or misunderstanding in the family. Ya kwamba yule ambaye anapata kipato cha juu hamuelewi yule mzee wake ama baba wa familia. Then it reaches a level whereby unapata ya kwamba madharau yanaanza kuingia. Mzee anaambiwa sasa, wewe unatosha nini katika familia ikiwa huwezi kuilisha familia yako? Labda huwezi kulipa hata school fees kwa sababu uko na kipato kidogo. So it is good and it's very important ya kwamba sisi katika familia we have open communication, we communicate and we have transparency. Kitu kingine ambacho kinaweza kusababisha violence katika familia ni heavy use of alcohol or drugs. There are spouses that use alcohol or use drugs. Na mwenzangu alipozungumza mbeleni kuhusu drug and substance use, drugs and alcohol impair our judgment. Na ikiwa kutakuwa na jambo ambalo limefanyika katika familia and you are under the influence of these drugs, either alcohol or other hard drugs, and since these drugs impair your judgment, it will be much easier when you are provoked or something happens in the family, you can result into violence. And that is why even as we speak to many people in the society, we discourage the use of drugs, because drugs can cause us to do things that we come to regret much later in life. Kitu kingine ambacho kinasababisha violence katika familia, mwenzangu alizungumza kuhusu depression or other mental health issues ambazo zinachangia members of the community or members of the society being affected psychologically. And definitely we know ya kwamba ikiwa mtu amepata shida ya kiakili, yule mtu hafikirii jinsi ambavyo anafikiria kama mtu wa kawaida. So when someone is under depression or other mental health illnesses or conditions, it is easy for them to resort into violence. Jambo lingine ni lack of non-violent problem solving skills. Ni jinsi gani sisi katika familia tunazungumza ama tunasuluhisha mambo yale ambayo yanatusumbua. And most of the times if you do not have these skills ya jinsi ya kusuluhisha zile changamoto ambazo zinakuwa katika familia, na changamoto haziwezi kosa. Most families have, or most spouses have differences. But the best thing to have is to know the best way on how to resolve these issues. Are we people who are able to sit down and talk out our issues? Are we people who are able to find help? Daktari Lisa alizungumza kuhusu kutafuta usaidizi. Ya kwamba wewe kama, nyinyi kama wachumba, wewe kama baba na mama katika nyumba, if you are not able to sit down by yourselves, there's an option of looking for a third party who is able to come and talk out your issues. Na mara nyingi haya ni mambo ambayo tunaweza kujifunza katika familia zetu, jinsi ya kusuluhisha changamoto ambazo tunakuwa nazo. Hata kama mmekosana na mke wako ama mume wako, ni vizuri ya kwamba muweze kuzungumza. Na when we also speak about family dynamics, there is the aspect of in-law parents, either the mother-in-law or the father-in-law, ambao kwa wakati mwingine huwa wanaleta mvutano katika familia. So in such a case, sisi kama familia, sisi kama wachumba, ikiwa tunakuwa na ile changamoto, how do you resolve it? Do you side with your in-law or your parents against your spouse? Or should you stand firm with your spouse? And these are some of the things unapata ya kwamba ikiwa wamekorofishana na hakuna kuelewana, unapata other spouses resort to having violence. Kitu kingine pia ambacho kinasababisha violence katika familia ni issue ya culture. Our culture at times, there are things that are outdated. Zama za kale, kuna watu walikuwa wanasema ya kwamba ikiwa uko nyumbani, ikiwa mjagombana na mke wako ama mume wako, it means that family is not okay. So some cultures are carrying this up to now, which is something that is very wrong, and we are discouraging that. Ya kwamba ikiwa mjagombana na mke wako ama mume wako, inamaanisha ya kwamba hiyo familia haiko sawa. So these are things that are outdated, and it is something that we should shun at all costs. So mwisho nitazungumzia kuhusu jinsi ambavyo tunaweza kusuluhisha changamoto ambazo tunakuwa nazo, na njia ni nyingi ambazo zinaweza kutumika. Na nitataja, I'll speak about 5 conflict handling styles ambazo unaweza kutumia pale kwa familia. Na wakati mwingine tunasema ya kwamba there is no better way of solving conflict. When conflict comes up, it depends with the situation that is at hand. Sometimes you may combine one conflict style, handling style with another, or sometimes you may use one or more than one. So ya kwanza inaitwa avoidance style. Na tunapozungumza kuhusu avoidance style, this is where an individual walks away or avoids conflict at all costs. Hawa kwa wakati mwingine tunawaita wangwana. Yeye akisikia kuna mahali ambapo kuna shida ama changamoto, for them they don't want to even go closer to that. They just walk away. Of course, at some point it will reach a point whereby it would be prudent for you to walk away, but not at all times. And as we are all aware, is that conflict is inevitable. You cannot avoid conflict. Conflict is always there. But when you avoid conflict at all times, it may not bring out good results. Sometimes it is important and prudent to face the challenge and ensure that you find a resolution for that challenge. Ya pili inaitwa accommodation or accommodative style. And when you talk about accommodative style, this particular type of style is assertive, and rather it's an assertive and accommodative. Ya kwamba wewe katika familia, ikiwa kuna changamoto, ni vizuri ya kwamba wewe unajiweka katika kile kiatu, ya kwamba unaweza kumsitiri yule ambaye labda umemkosea ama amekukosea. So you are able to accommodate them, and you are able to talk out your issues, and you are able to resolve them. Ya tatu, it is called compromise or compromising style. And when you talk about compromising style, this is a middle ground whereby you are able to sit down and talk your issues and see which are some of the areas that you feel you can be able to let go so that you have peace. Na katika familia, it may happen that at times Labda kuna your spouse has wronged you, but maybe they have not seen. So you come to a point whereby you are the first one to do what? To apologize, so that you have peace in the house. And this is something that we can also use even outside of our families. So it is something that is very important even as we interact also with others outside the family. Na ya mwisho, the second last is called competition. And we talk about competition in conflict handling style. Hapa ni ambapo wewe unajitakia wewe mwenyewe. Either umemkosea ama hujamkosea mchumba wako. Wewe you are Mr. Right ama Mrs. Right. You don't apologize, you don't calm down, you cannot be able to sit down to talk out about your issues. And this type of conflict handling style is discouraged, especially in the family setting. Katika familia, there has to be mutual understanding. You have to understand your partner and your partner to understand you. So when you talk about a competitive style, it is a style that is discouraged, especially in the family setting. The last one is collaborative style or collaboration. Na sisi katika familia, sometimes hata wakati umekosewa na mke wako ama mume wako, humble yourself, reach out to your partner and request them or ask them so that you can be able to sit down and talk out your issues, so that you are able to collaborate. And when you are able to collaborate, it is easier for you to get to understand one another so that it can avoid you from, or rather to avoid the conflict from escalating and even causing more harm in the family. And now as I finish, sometimes when you talk about gender-based violence or violence in the family, one of the key things that we need to have, number one, is to have understanding. Understand your partner, understand your spouse. And when there is a problem or a challenge, find ways on how you are to resolve such cases and avoid piling up of mistakes in the family. Ya kwamba ifikapo wakati kunakuwa na makosa ama kukosana katika familia, be open and solve your issues as they come up. Isikuwe ya kwamba unaiweka kwa stock, alafu ikifika mahali sasa zikilipuka, you start counting those mistakes or problems that you've had in the previous. So it is important that make sure if there is a challenge, you handle it as soon as possible, so that it doesn't pile up to cause more problems. That is what I had for today, but there are questions that were posed to us, so I have two which I would like to respond to. And one of them is about a mother-in-law. So from the question is that the mother-in-law has come in between the partners or the spouse, and the mother has succeeded in separating this family. So I think it's a lady that wrote this. So currently they are not together. This family is not together because, according to the one who has written this question, it seems it is the mother-in-law who has caused them to separate. So when we have such cases, number one, at our church, we have elders or church leaders. And it is important, even before it reaches a point whereby you go to separate, kindly, it is important that you seek help from the spiritual leaders. Secondly, maybe before you even reach that point of separation, you could have sought an MFT, marriage and family therapist, help. That is a professional field that you can be able to find help. And lastly, we have our parents, maybe from the other side, who can be able to engage with their in-laws to talk out about the issues that are challenging you. Another question is, during sexual gender-based violence, the speaker advised that we should not access our partner phones. And in fact, she called it a crime. So that is what this person has written. So she's asking if it is good that we should not be able to maybe look into our partner's phones. This is what I can say concerning this question. What would probe you to start looking into a partner's phone? It means there is mistrust between the spouse. So, and as we live in the family setting, it is good that we have a trusting environment where we do not have question marks about our spouses. So the fact that you are having interest to go into a partner's phone, it means there is no trust. But in the family setting, I believe it is important to have trust and have openness. But it is not good to even start having the second thought, like I should check into my partner's phone. I think that is what I can respond according to that. Maybe if there is any other person who would like to add on that, they can be able to respond. Otherwise, I thank you so much and may God bless you.
Asante sana, Moses. And thank you, all of you. Thank you, presenters. I know there are questions that need to be answered. There are many, but some have been answered. But again, time is not on our side. I want to welcome our pastor to greet us and make a conclusion as a district. Then if time allows, he will allow for a few questions to be answered. Yes, Pastor. You will guide.
Nimeona tumeanza kuondoka na tungemaliza pamoja, kwa hivyo maybe one question and urgent one peke yake ili we call it a day. Tunataka tusaidiane hizo fiti, mkiondoka itakuwa ni mzigo kwetu. I know some of you have been very tired since saa 2 asubuhi. Kwa hivyo we want to finish in an orderly way. Maybe Professor, the most urgent one moja peke yake ili tumalizie hapo.
Quickly, how can you be sure that you will conceive a boy child or girl child? Give guidelines. Hii swali nikiona naona kitu inaitwa anxiety. Anxiety inamaanisha there is fear of unknown. So tuache kukua anxious. Ule mtu Mungu atatubariki na yeye tumpende. Otherwise ukianza kutafuta, science ways are there are scientific methods. Lakini inaletwa na kuanza kufikiria kwamba kuna mtoto wa maana zaidi ya mwingine. Ya pili, one parent is barren, so do we adopt children? Hii maswali yote tukikuja pamoja, bwana na bibi, wakuje pamoja, wa agree kwamba sisi tumeaccept mimi niko barren na hatuzai watoto. Way forward can always be found. Problems come when we don't come together and discuss the issue. You have something in your mind, hujaiongea, mwenzako haijui, so unaanza kufikiria wewe ulete mtoto, hujui mwingine atasema nini. Come to the table and resolve that issue together. You will do what is best for you. But ukianza kutafuta njia mingi, you will do one side, alafu mwingine afurahi, but let us do what we have agreed to do and what is suitable for both of us. Na issue ya mtoto, that's why we said in family dynamics, Kuna familia imezaa wasichana peke yake, na hiyo familia inakuwa tu na shida. Na kuna ingine iko na wavulana peke yake, na bado kuna shida hapo because of anxiety. Ningezaa huyu ningekuwa sawa, ningezaa huyu ningekuwa sawa. Wacha tuachie Mungu mambo yake. But let us also accept where we are, perceive these children as equal children. Once we change our perspective, these issues will not be a problem. Thank you.
Asante. Ingine kwa sekondi mbili.
Yes, I have a few questions here, and I will try to answer them in a few minutes. Does the affidavit qualify you as a legal wife who can inherit the family property? And to answer this, you should know that an affidavit is used as a proof of marriage to one person who is married under customary law, and it can also used to prove marriage to employers, NHIF. But now, as we started, I told you there were some amendments that were done. So right now, the Attorney General issued a directive that customary marriage must be registered. Otherwise, they will not be recognized under the law. So make sure that you register you are married. The affidavit will not be used to qualify you as a legal wife for purposes of inheritance. Who is a next of kin? Is it the one who was married and separated, divorced from the family, or the one who's currently living or staying with the family? A next of kin can be one's closest living relative, a spouse, or a trusted individual that can be contacted in case of an emergency. So in the event you had listed your wife or your spouse as the next of kin, she's the one to be contacted. And in case you left behind shares or any money in the bank and you listed that person as the next of kin, she's the one to get the money. So in the event you were married with that person and you have since divorced, make sure that you change your documents and change the next of kin. What happens to a spouse who got married in a wedding ceremony, but the wife left and the husband has married, not legally divorced? What happens after very many years? Still the same applies. If you had contracted a marriage and the marriage was duly registered, you need to divorce for you to be able to marry a second wife. So in the event you marry a second wife and you have separated from the former wife without divorce, then know that the second marriage will not be recognized as marriage. A man has children and all the children are grown-ups. He is not ready to divide the wealth. He has not written any will and he has a second wife. What can you advise? The second wife was married after the first wife passed on. So also with this, you need to know that when you are alive, you have the right to give any person that you wish your properties. So nobody can force you to distribute properties when you are still alive. Inheritance comes in when you have died. But once someone is alive, you cannot force them to divide those properties. Even when you go to court nowadays, they advise you as a child, work hard and get your own properties and do not depend on what your parents have. Thank you.
Afikiri hiyo tumeelewa. Naomba kiongozi wa Family Life katika district yetu apeane vote of thanks.
Let me take this time to thank our guests who have been here on topical issues, and especially Professor Kalen Nyamwange for getting us the experts who have guided us on topical issues. Also through our pastorate, Senior Pastor Morara, for also allowing us to have a guest from Naivasha, the pastor who has been here for the 2 weeks. That is Pastor Daktari Evan Soga. So we are very happy that they have been with us for the last 2 weeks, and actually we have gained a lot, especially those ones who attended during a 2 weeks period. May God bless you. And you have seen that there's a big need in our church to get these experts. And the recommendation is that the pastor, through you, certain evenings, especially after noons, we shall be getting one expert at a time, if Pastor can allow. Thank you, Pastor. We thank you for allowing us to have this family life ministry, which you have gone through today. May God bless you all for being persevering this afternoon. Thank you. Pastor, thank you.
Asanteni sana. Kiongozi wa family life from Nyangongo, Elda Ukero nimekuona pale. You can salute. Asanteni. Kiongozi wa family life maili mbili, seated next. Naomba utupungie mkono Elda. Asanteni. Kiongozi wa family life from Stafford, Elda. Asanteni sana. Naomba na shukuru kwa ushirikiano wenu ambao tumekuwa nao tangu asubuhi. And wageni wetu walikuwa hapa for the last 2 weeks. They handled those topics. I hope some of you are following through kwa mtandao. Hata ingawa attendance haikuwa mzuri, lakini wamefanya sehemu yao. Nashukuru elda wetu ambao wanashirikiana kwa Family Life Council. Elda Ndema ako pale, Miss Nyamwange, ana wageni wetu, and some of them have been coming here na watasidi kuja ili watuelimishe kuhusu topical. Hiyo ndio mambo tulikuwa tunaita clinics. Wale ambao walikuwa na maswali kuhusu drugs, mtaalamu atakuwa hapa kwa ofisi yangu. Kuna maswali mengine ambayo ata-address privately. Kufikia hapa, ningependa tufikie tamati ya programu ya siku ya leo. Naomba widows, tuliwaita saira ya mchana. Nataka tukimaliza mkutane tu briefly, mumuone Mata. Epo Mata, simama. Mata ndio huyu, ndiye anasimamia mambo ya widows katika district yetu. She is soon leaving for USA. Hivi karibuni anaenda Marekani, kwa hivyo mkutane, mtuchagulie kiongozi mwenye atatuongoza kwa idara hiyo. And by the way, why is Margaret Obuogi and Obuogi? Pia wao wanaenda Marekani. Obuogi, mulienda wapi? Wakanjwangu. Margaret Obuogi na Obuogi pia wanaenda Marekani. Njugu jana ujina tokoa maiga. Tukupatia salamu upelekea Marekani, tupelekea Marekani. Wapi Margaret? Na yeye anasimamia idara ya prosperity. Magi alienda wapi? Ama amepanda ndege mse? Ameenda wapi? Mselda wetu suni wanaenda Marekani na Mag. Salimie.
Wapenzi wa Bwana na wasalimu katika jina la Yesu. Mjambo. Mimi kwa majina naitwa Elder Jackson Obuogi. Ni mmoja wa elders wa kanisa hili. Na vile pastor amesema, tunaenda kutembelea mtoto USA. Tutatoka hapa Kisii siku ya Jumanne ikiwezekana. Tukae Nairobi kwa hiyo wiki moja. Alafu tarehe 23 tutapanda